like to acknowledge the presence of our resource speaker, Mr. Christian Nagaynay. Sir, good afternoon. We also want to acknowledge the presence of our program coordinator, Dr. Rolando L. Nagorayan Jr. Sir, good afternoon. We also want to acknowledge the presence of our faculty, Mr. Marlon V. Ladja. Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to CM Talks BPA program. And thank you for joining us. And we hope that you will gain lots of new ideas and concepts related to the nature of our course today. I am Halusmi Caldeyo, your Master of Ceremony for today's program. Before we begin, so let's have first the roll call of our participants. To those who are joining with us today, with us today via Zoom and Facebook Live. So let's start. I want to see the students from BPA 1A. So where are the students from BPA 1A? Kindly drop a hashtag BPA 1A present and add your favorite emoji to be recognized. Next is the BPA 2A. So BPA 2A, kindly drop a hashtag BPA2A present and add what you are feeling today. And lastly, the BPA 3A. So BPA 3A, kindly drop a hashtag BPA 3A and your relationship status. So I'll be waiting for your hashtags on the comment section and the chat box. Hello everyone, Okay, from Altea, hashtag BPA2A, excited. So excited. Thank you. Also from BPA3A, from Jeremy Fabular, hashtag BPA3A single. Ayan, kaway-kaway sa lahat ng mga single. From from Claire Dilio, hashtag BPA happy. Wow, sana all happy. Okay, from Mia Beth Dikinia, hashtag BPA3A, single but ready to mingle. Ayan. So mga single yung mga BPA3A. Start our program. So while you are all busy dropping your hashtags, here are some friendly reminders to adhere during the webinar proper. First is check your internet connection. Second, make sure that your device is fully charged or you have a charger prepared. Third, focus on the webinar and to the speaker. Fourth, mute your audio to avoid unnecessary noise distraction during the webinar unless you are recognized to speak. Fifth, utilize the Facebook comment section and chat box if you have questions. Sixth, do not leave the Zoom meeting in the middle of the discussion. Seven, do not have the Zoom meeting in a crowded area. And lastly, do not forget to take down notes. Before we proceed to the webinar proper, let us honor first our national flag through the singing of our national anthem, followed by the doxology.
sa sinanganan, alam ng puso sa lilig mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kulit ka lang mabibig, sa manlulupig, di ka masisig. Sa lahat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit ang baka, may nilagang tula at ang sa ay minamahal. Ang sarang magawat, umita kung may nanatinigin, ang iluming na tarang niyang kailan pa may napinig. Lugar ang araw na aming pagsinamoy natin sa piling mo. Ang ligaya dapat may mga api ang mamatay na dahil sa'yo.
By the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry. Oh, who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. Who will veil my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it Instead, Lord, I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart.
For the information of everyone, we are now live at Junior Public Administration Society CapSU Main Campus Facebook page. So to begin this program, we are pleased to have our very handsome, supportive, and Bachelor of Public Administration Program Coordinator, Dr. Rolando L. Nagorain Jr. to deliver his opening remarks.
Okay, thank you, Helros. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you. So to our honorable guests, members of the faculty, my dear students, our friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. So thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us. Today marks our 13th Entrepreneurs Week, which is our annual activity conducted by the college for all management students to develop and showcase their talents and skills in different areas. So before we get started, I would like to express my sincere and heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to all of you who sincerely, generously committed to this event to make it a success. This event would have been impossible without the support of each and every one of you present here, especially you guys, my dear BPA students. And I'd like also to commend the College of Management Supreme Student Council headed by its governor, our very own Miss Glyden Rose Basas Dorado. Glyden, congrats. So this year's theme is Resilience Through Change, Embracing the New Normal Towards Student Empowerment and Excellence. So as we celebrate a decade and a three of our Entrepreneurs Week, the College of Management fosters the exemplary growth, the excellence, and success despite the pandemic. So you all participated, all will be participating in our series of activities, despite of being in the comfort of your homes. And I'd like to emphasize that it is the epitome of what the ideal College of Management should achieve. This is actually our vision. This is our vision that drives all of us to be the best in the center of excellence in business and public administration. I don't want to take too much of your time. I need to leave some time for our virtual speaker to introduce themselves to all of you. So guys, today will be fun and full of learning. So a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you, and once again, good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Sir Langorain, for that wonderful remarks. We are also pleased to have and welcome Ma'am Donna Dividina as she will formally introduce our speaker for today's webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you have a great day today. So our speaker for this webinar is an experienced civil servant with a demonstrated history of working in the government administration industry. He is also skilled in policy development and analysis, creative works, project planning, proposal writing, and knowledge management, and has a strong background and experience in strategic and communications planning. He is a graduate of Bachelor of Arts in Broadcast Communication in the University of the Philippines in the Visayas. He is also a master's degree holder in management, specifically in nonprofit public organization management in UP Visayas as well. And he also got his master's degree in city, urban, community, and regional planning in Chung'ang University, South Korea. He was an internship trainee in Dalim Industrial Company Limited in South Korea. He used to be a local government operations officer too in BALG in the Department of Interior and Local Government from 2011 to 2013. He was promoted then as Local Government Operations Officer 3 in year 2013 with BALG as well. And then he then became Local Government Operations Officer 5 from 2013 to 2016 with BILG as well, the same company. And he was then promoted as Local Government Operations Officer 6 from 2015 until to 2021 with the same company, Department of the Interior and Local Government. And currently, he is also a part-time university lecturer in the University of the Philippines in the Visayas and also in the University of San Agustin, Iloilo City since 2021 up to the present. And of course, currently, he is the OIC, Officer in Charge, Division Chief of the Department of the Interior and Local Government from 2020 up to the present. Our dear students, faculty, and staff, please help me in welcoming our guest speaker for today, Mr. Christian M. Bagaynan.
Thank you very much, Donna, for that very gracious and generous introduction. My respect to Sir Rolando Langurayan of the Capiz State University, the program coordinator for the Bachelor in Public Administration program, and of course, the Supreme Student Council of Capiz State University's College of Management. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I would like to thank as well my colleague Mardon for letting me know for this kind of opportunity to interface with you, although virtually. But it's quite a very meaningful experience to work with people who are in your age, the young people. That makes us feel younger even, although we are on the same generation. So don't worry. So thank you very much once again. And this is one thing that we are also advocating in the department as part of our knowledge management program. Just a little background, the Department of the Interior and Local Government is among the best local governance regional resource center in the whole country in terms of promoting and working on the framework of knowledge management. And this kind of webinar series is among those knowledge sharing activities that we are very much welcoming, especially on topics that go forward the principles of knowledge management and even how it seeps through the various platforms like this one in public administration and to the whole gamut of the management in general. So for this afternoon, I would like to share with you some insights on how are we actually journeying towards embracing the new normal and how we are defining actually the new normal in the context of governance and innovation. So allow me just to share my screen to everyone for a moment. So as I have said, this is where we're trying to spread out as well the opportunity to mainstream knowledge sharing activities like this one. And for this, my presentation will work closely on the invitation that you have sent to me as focused on governance and in innovation. So I would just like to provide some sort of insights on how things are working towards the context of governance, and how we are actually looking at the practice and even the concept of governance at this stage, and how we are utilizing opportunities to innovate in the context of governance. So I hope everyone can see my screen and I am loud and clear. That's the basic right now, things that we are asking when we are speaking virtually over webinar series, right? So can I see thumbs up sign if I'm loud and clear, and if you can see my screen from your end? Kanina may pa-hashtag, may hashtag. And then this one, can I see your thumbs up? All right, so I think everybody sees my screen and they can hear me. So my presentation this afternoon is entitled Lead Lucidly, Governance and Innovation Through Design Thinking. So some of you might hear about already what's design thinking is all about. It has been popularized by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the Sloan School of Business, when they're looking into different platforms in introducing mental models as opportunities to change the perspective of leadership and even the whole context of governance. And why I'm trying to inject innovation here is that at this current period of time, the game right now is towards really innovating and challenging what is in the status quo. And when we say about challenging the status quo, we're trying to look for opportunities wherein we can introduce new things that would become the new normal. And this is very relevant at this point, since we are in a period of time wherein we were challenged by the pandemic. In the past 2 years, we were rethinking on how are we going to go on with our lives and how are we going to continue with the things that we got used to before the pandemic, and how are we going to thrive uh, during the pandemic, and even how are we going to transition right after the pandemic. And we're looking at the transition period right now, wherein we're redefining what is the new normal. And when we say new normal, we are actually looking at new set of rules to govern a new world that was brought upon by the pandemic. When we speak about new normal in the context of governance and innovation, it's not about going back to what we used to have before the pandemic. Rather, it's really embracing what we have learned and work on those learnings as part of fortifying the future that is in front of us after this pandemic, or while we are transitioning towards pandemic. You might associate the title of my presentation to the first part of the most famous line that you might have encountered in your English classes. No? So if you're familiar with Desiderata, the first line goes this way, goes like this: go placidly na amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. Desiderata actually takes off from its Latin. Um, yeah, it's a form. It's a noun, which means the things wanted or needed, and this is very timely, since at this point in time, what we need right now as leaders and or as practitioners in public administration, and even in the whole context of management, we're looking at where are we leading towards to, and how are we supposed to lead. And this is an invitation, lead lucidly, wherein we're invited to take into a deep perspective of how we have to transform leadership, and how leadership will have to influence governance, and how governance will have to be influenced by the different trends of innovation. So it has been said, a lot of experts have been saying, even those who are working in consultancy firms like McKinsey and Company, they're saying that the failure of an organization is often attributed to the lack of vision. So when we speak about lead lucidly, I'm referring to generating a good vision for the organization, and nevertheless, no, putting into premium the need for a what we call no, a visionary form of leadership, wherein it has to transcend towards a visionary sense of governance. So it's timely since we've been transitioning to what seems to be impossible and unsettled times. With many of our leaders, we have seen overwhelmed by the fallout or the effects of COVID-19, and they've been scrambling from day to day and how are they going to manage the operations from the largest scale of the government down even to companies or organizations in a smaller scale. And we are looking at the key factors especially in reviving this kind of perspective, especially in rallying our people towards the transition towards the new normal. And it's key that at this point in time, we have already established the right vision and execute the right vision. Since this will not just be the only time wherein we are seeing impossible and unsettled scenarios, because from time immemorial, we've been experiencing a lot of uncertainties. And we are even considering right now our world as a world that operates in the context of a VUCA. If you're familiar with, it speaks about the volatility of time, the uncertainty, and then complexity, and then ambiguity. These terminologies refer to how some of our management scientists or management scholars, beginning from those who have been working in the US military, wherein these concepts or principles have been coined during the Cold War in early 1990s or late 1980s. This looks into how we're defining the transition, especially at this point in time wherein we're experiencing a lot of firsts right after the pandemic, while transitioning to the digital economy and everything that has been disrupted by technology. And that it's important that learning as an organization more than the learning process as an individual should be considered as a cumulative and incremental experience for us to be able to consider thriving and succeeding in a world wherein volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity exists. So that's VUCA, and that's the context of how are we redefining the governance and how are we introducing innovation to answer these difficulties brought about by a VUCA world. So we are living in a VUCA world, and for us to be able to consider or for us to be able to successfully thrive, there are different paradigm shifts that have been introduced also by different thinkers, and one of which is what we call design thinking. Now, this is where we introduce different mental models, and one of the most visible component of that design thinking process is how we adhere to knowledge management, wherein we put premium into the processes of creating new knowledge, generating those new knowledge from the different tacit sources, meaning those who are experts in their different fields. It's important that we generate out of those undocumented knowledge. When we speak about tacit, these are all forms of knowledge that are residing inside the head of those people who've been considered experts or those who've been considered as seasoned people for that certain subject matter. So it's important because uncertainty indicates that the lack of knowledge related to the frequency and significance of environmental change. See, uncertainty is being considered as an indication of the lack of knowledge related to the frequency of change or significant change or significance of environmental change. So that's how scholars like Bennett and Lemon in 2014 actually introduced the concept of design thinking. And through knowledge management, we are addressing that lack of knowledge for us to be able to put forward all these knowledge together is document them, store them, share them, and apply these knowledge to respond to that challenge of uncertainty. And the same scholars, no, Bennett and Lemoine, said that uncertainty is only solved by collecting and interpreting and sharing of knowledge. And that makes a whole lot of sense to how knowledge management is considered as a powerful mental model to address that disruption brought by uncertainty, right? So that would be the run of my sharing this afternoon, for you to be able to put into the discussion table the importance of design thinking and how it operates in the context of knowledge management. So to put some sort of conceptual clarity, now this is how we view design thinking as a model. When we say design thinking model, now we're referring into the organizational learning. So how organizations learn, how our organizations perceive the process of learning, and that's translated into two different, two important aspects of organizational learning. And that first one is on learning capabilities, how our organizations adopt or are looking forward into their capability to learn or to absorb their learning conditions. And then that also redounds to their problem solving capabilities, how they're looking into their strengths or their opportunities to address certain problems that are being faced by the organization. And all of these, we all refer to these as absorptive capacity. And that absorptive capacity is part of how we view design thinking process, wherein how do we consider knowledge generation and creation from the end of the organization, and how this is absorbed in the learning and then problem solving capabilities of an organization. So that brings us some sort of a direction towards how we are processing or how we are looking at design thinking as a model in the context of the organization with organizational learning, which is a very important formula or a very important ingredient of an innovating aspect of governance. So while we are putting premium to viewing governance as an institution or as a process, we're looking into the ability also of that process to go further to what has been provided to us by the texts or any related literature, but by means of converging the experience, the different cultural norms, perhaps. These are all important components in holistically building our thought process towards appreciating governance and innovation in the new normal, right? So how do we really maximize the process of design thinking in terms of applying it to the new normal concept? So McKinsey and Company has been adopting this kind of framework, wherein gone are the days that we have to be on our defensive track. Rather, we have to move from risk management to strategic resilience. And that can only brought about by our anticipation of things, by being ready and by acknowledging that we are in a certain world wherein we are experiencing a lot of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. All those that I have mentioned as a pretext. This is where we take off and actually solidify the factor of an innovating governance, or an innovating aspect of governance, wherein we transition from being in our defensive track towards our strategic resilience. So we hear a lot about risk management, and here comes some of our scholars putting forward the discussion on strategic resilience. How do we build, or how do we transition from managing risk to building what we call strategic resilience? So in the following slides, I'll be introducing you how things are referred to in terms of strategic resilience. These are just the basic tips that were espoused by the different scholars or the different thinkers on how strategic resilience works. First, it goes back to the vision, setting a clear direction, and we don't play it safe anymore. That's why risk management is the component of not playing it safe, because we know what are the consequences and how are we going to manage these consequences, and how do we translate the management of these consequences and risk into something that will allow us to transition from the defensive track, is for us to be visionary, for government as an institution, for governance as a process, to imbibe really a clear direction setting, and that can only be defined by a very clear vision of what we really want to be, of where we are leading to, and how are we seeing ourselves, our organizations, our processes in a given period of time, considering these externalities, these environment that we have, the difficulties, the uncertainties that we are facing. So number one rule is to really look into setting clear direction and not playing safe. Second is establishing our foresight capabilities. A lot of strategic management thinkers right now are saying more of and discussing a lot about foresight capabilities. It's more than planning, wherein we've been taught of planning as working ahead of time to what we are supposed to do, from the identification of the problem, from the gaps of the problem towards the desired state that we are trying to reach into. Foresight capabilities, or establishing our foresight capabilities, refer to a more complex process, and that's where what we call innovation really comes in. Because when we plan, we stick to what are the steps that need to be complied to in terms of addressing the different gaps in our areas. And when we build our foresight, or when we establish our foresight capabilities, we try to tweak things towards looking at the unusual to address the recurring or the usual problem, or even anticipate those problems that do not even have precedents, like what we are experiencing right now during COVID-19. So that's very important, establishing your foresight capabilities by looking at things through the lens of innovation, by identifying what is more than those that are currently working in our scenario. What can we offer, or what can we design more than what we are used to? And that's going beyond, or that's going above the traditional planning that we do when we speak about establishing our foresight capabilities. The Development Administration of the Philippines have been pursuing this kind of perspective thinking in some of their programs, wherein the exercise really of foresight building is more geared towards tweaking the planning process and introducing a non-linear, even when you say non-linear, we're used to planning from steps 1, 2, and 3, and 4, but there are different forms of approaches, like scenario building, that allow us to establish this kind of foresight capabilities. Right, moving on. Once you have your foresight capabilities, it's very important that regardless of what will happen, regardless of where you are situated at, in terms of governance and in terms of the perspective of leadership, you have to create and define your own brand and make it stand out. Because that's the only way that you can sustain and ensure that your kind of organization will have to permeate the challenges, or even the changes of time. So when we speak about defining our own brand, that's accompanying our vision of what we really want, and this is how we are supposed to be viewed as an organization, as an individual, and this is how our brand of governance is, and this is how our brand of innovation is all about. And that's where the design thinking process comes in, by establishing that kind of mental model, no, by first understanding, no, our brand commitment or our brand identity. Because leading towards, no, my next discussion on design thinking proper, wherein it focuses on building your creative vision to lead and for you to succeed, and for us to create that kind of environment wherein these tribes, no, as a helpful platform towards assisting, no, our organizations, and even really challenging perhaps your current perspectives as future practitioners of public or business administration, or even scholars of public administration. Design thinking has emerged as an absorptive capacity and an integrative learning method. So it's a capacity and learning method to approach our complex and often ambiguous problems. And that makes sense that when we speak about design thinking, it tries to address the VUCA environment, wherein it has been supported by various studies and has been confirmed by several studies, particularly those who have been advancing this in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Sloan School of Business, saying that the ability of design thinking learning structures to facilitate our absorptive capacity and promote organizational learning in a technology-driven, highly disruptive VUCA environments, no, is part of, no, largely addressing that need to be creative towards our vision, and that vision influencing our way of leading. And our way of leading will have to influence our way of succeeding as well, right? So design thinking actually works on the different mental models, and how these mental models are understood, no, depends on how they are situated, no, in the context of the organization, or even the externalities, no, in the environment that we have. So not only do they shape what we think and what we understand, but they also shape the connections and opportunities that we see. Because when we speak about, no, the innovation and then even governance as a whole process, it should not be operating in silo. Gone are the days that the models of our thinking, no, focuses on a very specialized or in a very constricted way, in such a manner that we see things in silo, meaning how compartmentalized they are. But at this point in time, we're looking at the value of convergence, and in building our vision, it's very important that we don't get, or we don't create that kind of myopic vision. That myopic vision that's very dangerous, no? Because at this point in time, we have to be very much aware of the externalities affecting our own perspective, even the way we see things, no? And the way we are up to simplify the complexities, no, for us to be able to absorb and understand these different challenges brought about by the VUCA environment. The quality of our thinking is actually proportional to the models in our head, and the usefulness in the situation at hand. So the more models that we have, the bigger our more likely, the bigger the right models to see the realities. It's important that while we are aiming for a creative vision, we have to remain grounded. Now, most of us, however, are specialists. No? So instead of a lattice work of mental models, we have a few from our discipline, and each specialist sees something different. So by default, a typical engineer will think in systems. Let's say, for example, a psychologist will think in terms of incentives, and the way we think as public administration experts, no, or scholars would also be different from these different professions. So there are different core mental models that we are working on in terms of understanding the context, and that it's very important when we speak about the core mental models. There are, as I have mentioned earlier, that allows us to view reality in a more scaled, or in a more a wider perspective, no? And that makes it closer to what we see as a simplifying option for the complexities that we face, so that no matter how creative our vision is, we remain grounded. So the first one is, the map is not the territory. This is the map of the map of reality is not really the reality, and even the best maps even are imperfect. So that's because there are reductions of what they are representing. So if a map were to represent the territory with perfect fidelity, it would no longer be a reduction, and that it will no longer be useful to us. No? So a map can also be a snapshot of a point in time representing our own sets of reality. So it's very important that at this point, we have to understand that not all that we see, especially right now that there's been a massive movement in the social media on how things are being presented to us. And it's left on us on how are we going to perceive those that are given, or those that are provided to us. So that's how we discern things. And the second one is the circle of competence. No? What you think and what you know. No? The circle of what you know may be just smaller of what you think you know. No? When ego and not competence drives us, no, of what we undertake, we have blind spots. No? And that blind spots, if you know what you understand, you know where you have an edge over others. No? So when you are honest and about where your knowledge is lacking, you know where you are vulnerable and where you can improve. So that's very important now, that we have to segregate that kind of process flow in terms of understanding where we are in terms of the circle of competence as a mental model. And then thirdly, now there's what we call the first principles thinking. It's one of the best ways to reverse engineer the complicated situations and unleash creative possibilities. So sometimes we call reasoning from first principles. No? It's a tool to help clarify the complicated problems of separating and underlying facts, no, that from any assumptions, no, based on them. So you've been familiar about reverse engineering, the way of thinking on that. No, so those are the first core mental models that we are looking at. So if I may, I would just like to request for just a 5-minute break, because we'll be changing our power supply here in the office. I might be cut off in 5 minutes. So I'll stop here in a while, and then let's just declare a health break before I proceed. And let's just give me 5 minutes to change, for us to change our power connection, and then I'll be back after 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So let's have a 5-minute break.
Okay, continue.
So guys, please continue to drop your hashtags. So guys, so while waiting for Mr. Christian again, please continue to drop your hashtags on the comment section or in the chat box. Or kindly drop a yellow hearts. Okay. Ang daming yellow hearts na sa chat box and sa comment section. Thank you so much. So, next, let's have a mental health check. So, rate your mental health. Mental health. 1 is the lowest and 10 is the highest. So, I'll be waiting for your answers on the chat box and the comment section. Wow, 9/10. 9/10 rather. Wow, 10/10. Kaya may parapol sa Sir Langgurayan. Next, 8/10 from Daniela. Oh, 8/10 from Mia. So guys, reminders, please don't leave the meeting in the middle of the discussion. Well, from our program coordinator, ang makahatag intermission number may free load through GCash. Sir, may video ko di. I-send ko lang si mo. So again, while waiting for Mr. Christian Naginay, I would like to thank the College of Management for this opportunity and to all the faculty and staff of the college who are joining with us today. So wala gid may intermission number.
All right, so I hope everyone had their health break. Sorry for that. We just have to make things stable, especially our power connection here at the regional office. Anyway, just a recap of what we had discussed prior to this one. We're looking at the core mental models. So the map is not the territory, meaning what we really see and what we really look at in the different platforms. The most common would be the social media pages or even the different social media platforms. It really requires a lot of discerning and for us to be able to establish a very clear vision towards our process of governance and for us to take into that innovating opportunities, we have to make sure that what we see are most likely verified and they are all well defined by facts and the truth. So we've also looked into the circle of competence, meaning this is where we have to to admit no, and define no, where are we in terms of the vast knowledge of experience, so that we don't go to that egoistic no, side of assuming that we know things. So we know a lot of things, when in fact what we know is just a portion of what it's really all about no, in terms of the area. And the first principle thinking no, wherein, as I have mentioned, this kind of mental model looks into how we anticipate or perhaps identify the process of making sure that the as the name suggests, the first principle thinking helps us understand the way kumbaga, the way the possibilities no, are offered to us, and the way things are provided to us by value of reasoning. Reasoning by first principles is useful eventually when we are doing something for the first time, or when we're dealing with complexity, the requirement for such, and when we have to try to understand the situation that we are having problems with. And all of these areas, no, our thinking gets better when we stop making assumptions, and when we stop letting others from making or letting others frame the problem for us. So it's where we have to make sure that the way we see things and the way we view the reality of the problem, or the gravity even of the problem, it's within our framework of understanding. Right. So looking to the other core mental models, no, for us, no, there's also what we call the thought experiment. And on these mental model, that thought experiments can be defined as the devices of imaginations used to investigate the nature of things. No? So many disciplines actually are using this kind of mental model, such as the field of philosophy, even physics no, is using this. They make use of thought experiments to examine what can be known, and it's really uncovering no, what is hidden no, in the unknowns no, and making it known to the conditions no, of how we perceive no, the ideas, and that in terms of allowing a perspective avenue for inquiry. So as you can see, now this is highly simplified by the illustrations of a barber, the people who don't shave themselves, the people the barber shaves, and then those people that the barber doesn't shave, and those people who shave themselves. So it brings us in understanding the thought of how many or who are really those being in that kind of sphere or in that bubble. The benefit of thought experiment is, as opposed to well, another mental model, is the structure. Now, in an organized manner, thought experiments allow us to challenge the intellectual norms, and that it moves beyond the boundaries of ingrained facts and comprehend history, and make logical decisions, and then foster innovative ideas and widen our sphere of reference. So it's like putting together all different forms for us to be able not just to handpick, but for us to be able to decide things on depending on how are they operate in the different environment or the different conditions. And that's how innovation is being born. It's not just about a magical aha moment, but it takes really the process of investigating a lot of things involving this kind of concept. And on thought experiments, in the 19th century, there's a philosopher. His name was Ernst Mach, who wrote about curiosity, and then such curiosity is considered to be an inherent human quality. The reason why we have always that process of thinking and questioning things over and above what we are seeing and what we are hearing, and before we absorb things and before we try to put things together, it undergoes the process of inquiry, and that's brought about by our innate quality of curiosity, as Mac would put that into context. The second, or the fifth, no, this is already the fifth core mental model I would like to share with you is the second order thinking. We have the first principle thinking. This one naman, it's the second order thinking. And almost everyone actually, it's grounded on the idea that almost everyone can anticipate the immediate results of their actions. So the consequence of actions. And that this type of thinking, no, is easy and safe, but we're looking at now first order thinking as fast and easy, while second order thinking is more of deliberate. So we're like looking at different aspects or different angles. If we do this, what will be the consequences? If I do this in a way that, let's say for example, the way we handle our day-to-day actions. The moment that we wake up, the first order of thinking would tell you that you need to fix your bed. And the second order thinking, it gives you already the other depth or the other dimension of how are you going to do the fixing of the bed, where you're going to start, since that will have an effect. If you're time conscious or time consuming, you'll have to eliminate time consuming steps or actions by doing that. And that's the benefit of second order thinking, because it allows us to discern more, and to identify some interventions and primarily expect for some harm, or harmful effects that may not be identified in the first order thinking, in the first order of thinking process, right? So that's the fifth mental model. And then moving on to the last two core mental models, this one of the probabilistic thinking, coming from the words we're using, probabilistic, the probabilities. It looks into the estimations, the use of some tools of mathematics and logic in really identifying the likelihood of any specific problem outcome, or any specific outcome in general that may come in our way once we engage in a certain action or in a certain thought process. And probabilistic thinking allows us to define or improve the accuracy of our decisions. So this is critical, since most of our decisions will have to be grounded on the probabilities of things, to make sure that the risk that we are managing, the way we introduce innovation is actually a form of risk, and applying it to the governance process already requires a huge circle of risk that needs to be mitigated. And one of the best ways in terms of mental modeling to address that kind of risk from the lowest point, even strategically, using mathematical models like the ones being introduced by probabilistic thinking, that will define and allow you to see the favorable outcomes out of the actions or the strategies that you are going to employ. On the other hand, there's what we call the inversion and the power of avoiding the stupidity. Well, we've come to a point in time wherein common sense right now is not so common. It becomes luxury. And that's very important for us to understand when we do mental modeling and we go and apply it to higher forms of thinking process like governance and introducing innovation. We have to ensure that in this kind of mental model, inversion is considered to be a powerful tool to improve our thinking because it helps us identify already and remove the obstacles to success. And the root of inversion, the root word of inversion saying is invert, which means to append or turn upside down. As a thinking tool, it means that approaching a situation from the opposite of the natural starting point. Most of us would think that one way about a problem is forward-looking, but inversion is you start with what's the problem and how are we going to avert that problem, because it allows us to flip the problem around and think backwards. So sometimes it's good to start at the beginning, and it's good to start, no, but well, from the tip point itself. But it can be more useful to start at the end, and this is where we try to anticipate, no, what will be the end, no, and what will be the result of our actions, and then tracking back, no, going backwards from the result. How are we going to mitigate some interferences or some failures, no, and that's where we introduce, no, the mental model on inversion and the power of avoiding stupidity. So while both thinking forward and thinking backward result in some action, now we can think of them as additive versus subtractive. And despite our best intentions, thinking forward increases the odds that will cause harm, and then thinking backward, call it subtractive. Avoidance or inversion is likely to cause any harm, since we have already anticipated what are those harmful opportunities or perhaps interferences that might come along the way, and that inverting the problem won't always solve it. No? So that's not a perfect model actually, but it will help us avoid, the trouble that we're going to face, and we can think of it as an avoiding stupidity filter. And it's not well, it's not sexy, but it's a very way to improve the mental modeling on that note. So those are just different core mental models that we can apply to when we try to envision, where we are trying to define the state of governance that we want, or how are we going to improve ourselves on the individual level, and how are we going to be, or how capable are we towards innovating or introducing different forms of innovation. Okay, so I'm running on the last 6 slides. So moving on, as we've been telling about a lot of the disruption happening, from the pandemic in the past 2 years. Most of you have not seen your friends, your classmates, even in the past 2 years, and you've seen each other virtually, and you've missed a lot the festivity and then in schools. No? I know some of you have been really eager to go back to school and to enjoy the different activities in school. That's part really of the college life, and being with friends and learning a lot. But there are things that we need to understand, that this is part of the disruption, and this disruption should not stop us from navigating the things that we want. When I say navigating, not necessarily that we have to settle to what is being offered to us. No, we have to redefine, as I have mentioned earlier. We're transitioning towards a new world where it will be operated by new rules, and that for us to be able to thrive and succeed in this kind of disruption happening within our time, I just have some 4 sharings or insights on that, bringing on the mental models that we have just discussed now, just a while ago. Dismantling the regions, now we have to understand the importance of systems thinking, that all things follow in different process, in different order, and that we have to understand where we are situating in this order of things, or in this order of systems, or how these systems operate within our context. So as scholars or as students of public administration, or the whole of the College of Management, we have to understand and look for our niche. Actually, it's finding our niche. Where are we situated at? And where do we find ourselves in that order of system, or in that order of thinking? Since we cannot control things, as I have said, we are living in a VUCA environment. We have to operate in an organized chaos. What we are right now is where we are right now is is considered an organized chaos, well, ironic as it may be, saying that it's an organized and yet it's a chaos. But then that's how things are operating right now. We cannot have the best of both worlds. We cannot just have the whole organized thing, and we cannot just be doomed to just the chaos thing. We must ensure that for us to thrive in this VUCA environment, we have to adopt in an organized chaos, and that we have to unlearn the myths of stagnation and complacency. So for us to be able to successfully transcend the innovating forms of governance, and for us to be able to transcend the value of new world leadership, we have to um, disrupt or perhaps call that stagnation model. And every day should always be a learning process, and that learning process should trigger us not to be complacent of where we are. Just like the mental model on the circle of competence. It's not enough that you are within your bubble of thinking that you know this, because there are a lot of things outside of your bubble that you are capable of learning. When we say building your fortress, you have to enrich the design for disruptive technology, maximize technology, own the technology, and do not allow technology to own us. Some of the system management or the scientific management scholars have been studying about technological determinism, wherein we ended up thinking that technology is the response or the answer to all, or the solution to all the problems that we have. But in this disruptive form of technology, we have to nourish and enrich that technology, that it should work to our advantage and not enslaving us in the end. And understanding that there are things or there are dimensions like human interactions that cannot be fooled or cannot be copied by technology. And that allow ourselves to incubate a hatch for innovation, meaning let's try to redefine where are we in terms of our process of thinking, or in terms of understanding things, and how can we see through innovations from it. Cut the process. That's where you cut the process of stagnation and complacency by looking at what more can you do, what more can we offer to, and that will form part of the creative vision that you can look into in terms of strengthening your value towards really introducing as futures of public and business administrations in the context of how you're going to bring forward the learnings that we have during this pandemic, and making sure that that becomes a source of our opportunity to innovate. And finally, on this note, avoid the culture of toxic positivity. This has been very common to us, and this has been largely attributed to the way we see things. It's okay because we are in a better position. But yes, we are in a better position. We're thankful for that. But not all of us are on the same page of understanding things. That's why it's good that you have your mental health checks, because it's very important that we discuss among ourselves, and that sometimes it's okay not to be okay, and for us to be okay is to acknowledge that part that we need help, and that's where we build ourselves towards fortifying our resolve to become a strong foothold of our innovation, and how are we going to transcend governance from our individual scale up to our influence in the organization where we are working in. And then on the third tips on navigating the disruption, you guard the walls. Create a culture of knowledge transfer, and this is the best opportunity that we have the technology that would cheapen the sharing of knowledge, because we can have anybody in any place. Like I'm here in Iloilo, I'm talking to everyone in Capiz, and to those who are tuning in to your Facebook Live at a cost that's not even hard to cope up with. And that's knowledge. That's a knowledge transfer culture that we are imbibing, and the webinars that you're doing it's a great example of a culture of knowledge transfer. So continue working on that, and that provides space for communities of practice. Now consider yourselves to be part of the community of practice. Community of practice is just an informal gathering. It can be a formal or informal gathering of like-minded people. In that case, on your end, as public administration or business administration or part of the Supreme Student Council of the College of Management, you can group together what are your in point of interest, and where do you want to develop your expertise, no? And try to encourage people to work with you and discuss and solve problems and share those insights, no? And that's where you build your communities of practice and design opportunities for learning and engagement. And this kind of webinar is a perfect example of that learning and engagement, no? Regardless of the space, the travel requirements, no, we are still learning. We're still sharing our insights, no, and we're providing thoughts, no, on the group, no, that we belong to, and to those who are interested to join us. And then lastly, on the fourth tip, no, write the narratives. No, it's not just enough that you stop from building those communities of practice and designing your learnings, no, learning engagements. It's important that you engage stories that inspire. It's a very critical ingredient in a successful governance process, that motivation and inspiration as leadership in the vision, in crafting our vision, would really play a big role in that. And engage different stories, your colleagues, your classmates, your friends, and in the circle that you are working at. Look at those stories. I myself have been very in touch with the students, their stories. Most of them right now, while juggling their studies, no, some of them are working students, and they just have to adjust their time. And they've been telling me a lot of their experience about the difficulties of learning and the things that they need to do for adjustments. No? And those stories are inspiring because they are motivated, or they are inspired to continue their studies while earning in different forms of different opportunities. And that is a story of perseverance and commitment to education and in bettering themselves. And by documenting and by telling these stories, we are empowering more of these types of storytellers. Might be from your group, no, would have a very good story to tell. Then let's empower them to become the storytellers, the people who would tell us of their narratives, and that document and reward those stories that made ripples, meaning those will have to touch people's lives and commitments among your among your peers. It's very important. So my question, how are we going to do this? No, and I started my sharing with you saying that you have to lead lucidly, and leading is not just a grand show of your capability in harnessing people's capabilities, even and rallying them towards a common goal or a bigger cause. It has to begin with yourself. That's why I'm trying to bring forward to you the different mental models that you can use for you to introspect, to think about where you are coming from and how are you going to develop your individual way of thinking, and that will have to influence your perspective. And once your perspective is built, that allows you to check on your vision and creatively work on that vision. Where do you want to, how you're going to achieve that vision. And we have still to understand that while we are in the process of improving ourselves to become visionary leaders that would be helpful partners in the community and in the nation building, it's very important to acknowledge, as I have said, while we are also advocating the resiliency, it's okay to admit that sometimes we are not okay, and that we are part of those who are thriving in a VUCA world, and it's tiring. Yeah, nobody can just say that it's okay. We have to acknowledge that fact that it's tiring as well. And sometimes if it's okay to sit still, and when that time comes that you feel like it's tired, you're tired already, it's tiring already. Sometimes it's okay to sit still and then try to meditate and then look for the perspective that you want to build, and then refocus your vision. Since while you're sitting still, go ahead and sit down and stay still if you need to. Take your time to rest, relax, and then recreate what you want to see on yourself, um, because that's where you'll be effective in leading lucidly. And when that happens, no, take your time, take your time, and then build on those silent moments, no, then thrive again. Regardless of the difficulty, no, the challenge will always be, as I have said, we're shifting from the defensive mode to really establishing our strategic resilience mindset. And that strategic resilience mindset in the context of advocating good governance and the process of innovating, it's all about that opportunity that every day we are given chances to thrive, regardless of how difficult times may be and days may be. So thank you very much, everyone, for this opportunity. And I hope I was able to provide you some insights on how we are building our perspectives towards the new context of the new world we are working at with the new rules that we are about to follow. Mayong hapon sa aton tanan, keep safe and stay healthy, everyone. If you have questions or if you have some thoughts to share, I would be happy to hear them and respond to those questions. Glyden, over to you. I'm done.
So thank you so much, Mr. Christian Naganay, for that very informative, interesting, and enlightening talk on how we transform leadership and how leadership influence the governance and how the governance influence different kinds of innovation. So thank you so much for that, sir. I hope that also everyone listened and learned a lot from your talk. So now for the question and the answer part. If you have any questions or other clarifications, you may post it on the chat box or on the Facebook comment section. So guys, we are waiting for your questions. So, hindi na ako maghuya-huya. Kindly drop it on the comment section or in the Zoom chat box.
Glyden, I'll take this question from the chat box. We have from Miss Shalane Grace Denor. What can you say about the design thinking as an approach that involves capacities that we all have but that are overlooked by more conventional problem solving practices? Yeah, if you can still remember the diagram that I have provided, the design thinking follows the concept of how we are understanding organizational learning process. And when we speak about organizational learning process, it has to understand what are the learning capabilities and what are our problem solving capabilities. And when we speak about design thinking, the overlook perhaps by those capacities that are overlooked by conventional problem solving practices does not involve, they focus much on the problem solving capabilities, but they are not looking towards that area of learning capabilities, which is very important because that's where we are to understand where the organization or the individual is coming from in terms of their learning capabilities. Most often, they are overlooked because of that. We're focused on that dimension already of problem-solving practices without understanding the effect of the learning capability, since that allows us to define different learning curves. Different individuals have different learning curves, and when we speak about different learning curves, there are also a lot of influences on that. The demographics will also play a lot on that. And then second is the cultural representation or cultural norms, where they are coming from. And then thirdly would be the influence of the organization towards their overall learning capabilities. So I think that's where the missing point comes in, which is very important when we see design thinking as a process. We have to look back into those two different components of organizational learning, from learning capabilities and then the problem solving capabilities.
So thank you so much, sir, for answering her question. So guys, is there any other questions? So you can drop it on the chat box and on the comment section. So I guess that there's no other questions. So we will proceed to the next part of this program, the awarding of the certificate. Again, thank you so much, Sir Christian, for being with us today, despite of your busy schedule. At this juncture, we will award the Certificate of Appreciation. So let me review the content of the certificate. Capital State University, Ross City Main Campus, College of Management. Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Mr. Christian Naganay, a resource person, for imparting his valuable insights and inspiration during the 13th Entrepreneurs Week with the theme Resilience to Change, embracing the new normal towards student empowerment and excellence. held last March 15, 2025, hosted by the Junior Public Administration Society, given this 15th day of March 2023. Signed by the College of Management Dean Dr. Ian B. Arcet. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. And we're very much happy for this opportunity for us to share. In behalf of the department, we're very much glad to see this kind of knowledge sharing activities in the schools, hoping to have for more engagements with the university through the College of Management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So we are about to end our program, but before that, may I request everyone who are joining with us today via Zoom to kindly open your video cameras for the photo opportunity. So everyone, kindly open your video cams.
All right, we are now done with the photo opportunity. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir Chris, thank you.
Thank you, man, sir.
Before we end this program, may I request Ms. Jelaine Grace Dolor, President of Junior Public Administration Society, to deliver her closing remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to our resource speaker for his valuable contribution to our webinar on the occasion of the college, which is the Entrepreneurs Week with the theme Resilience through Change, Embracing the New Normal Towards Student Empowerment and Excellence. I am certain that the takeaways from this lecture will further deepen our understanding in the perspective of leadership, innovation, design thinking, and the whole context of governance and mental moves for how we understand the world. My deepest gratitude goes also to those who attended the webinar, to our advisor, Mr. Langarayan, to the faculty present. Good afternoon. Also, thank you to those persons behind to make it such a successful event. Thank you, CM Department, for the opportunities for us to learn and explore new ideas and concepts related to our course. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dolor, for that closing remarks. So reminders, to get your certificate of participation, kindly accomplish the following. First, the registration form, the attendance form, and lastly, the evaluation form. Once again, thank you everyone for joining with us today. Thank you for your time and presence. And thank you to our resource speaker, Mr. Christian. We learned a lot from your talk today. We will surely mind those points you discussed. So, to all future public administrators out there, may we all mind that we are not just a kabataan, but we are the pag-asa ng bayan. The vision that drives all of us to be the best and the center of academic excellence in business and administration, engage, explore, and excel. This has been Hello Michael Deus. See you again. And and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye. Kindly stand by for the singing of
March on, yes, hold on to the dream of your heart. March on, yes, and hold high your head with great pride. March on, yes, persevere in your quest for the truth. Work for quality and service, strive for excellence, believe in your dreams. Drink from the fountain of wisdom and partake in the banquet of knowledge. Strengthen your wings, spread them wide and soar up high to the sky. March on, yes, and hold into the dream of your heart. March on, yes, and hold into the dream of your heart.
Thank you so much, everyone.